The morning air was brisk as Emily stepped off the bus, her worn shoes carrying her along the familiar street where the little cafe stood. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the chill, but from the weight of her worries. The young nurse had worked 3 night shifts in a row, patching up strangers, comforting patients who called her Angel without realizing that the angel they saw was broke, exhausted, and running on nothing but scraps of determination. Today was payday, or at least it should have been, but an error in her bank's processing left her with only a crumpled $5 bill in her purse. It wasn't enough for groceries, not enough for rent, not enough for anything except a single cup of coffee. And yet, she told herself, it would have to be enough for courage, enough for the chance to meet someone who might just see her differently. Her best friend had insisted she go on a blind date, saying, "Emily, you give your heart to everyone else. You deserve someone who'll give theirs to you." Emily hadn't wanted to agree, but loneliness can press against the chest like a stone, and when she looked at herself in the mirror that morning, pale-faced, hair loosely tied, uniform replaced by a simple sky blue dress and cardigan, she whispered, "Maybe today, just maybe, I'll be seen." The cafe door jingled as she stepped inside. Warmth and the rich smell of roasted beans enveloped her like a bomb. The place was buzzing with life, students tapping on laptops, businessmen holding quiet meetings, a couple laughing in the corner, but she felt like a ghost slipping in among the living. She walked to the counter, counted her bills twice to make sure, and ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu. The barista gave her a polite smile, unaware that Emily had just handed over the last of her money, unaware that the steaming cup placed before her was more than a drink, it was a symbol of her last little piece of hope. She found a table by the window, set her phone down, and wrapped her hands around the cup, trying to still the pounding in her chest. Would he come? Would this man her friend spoke so highly of actually show up? She had no expectations. She couldn't afford to dream of fairy tales. For all she knew, he might take one look at her, with her tired eyes and worn cardigan, and walk out. She sighed, staring at the swirl of steam rising from the cup, unaware that behind her, someone had just stepped into the cafe who would change her life forever. Daniel Carter entered quietly, though it was impossible not to notice him. At 32, he carried himself with the air of a man who had wrestled with the world and won. His tailored gray suit fit him perfectly, his posture straight, his gaze steady, and though he exuded confidence, there was a softness in his eyes that made people instinctively trust him. Daniel wasn't just another customer, he was the cafe's CEO, the visionary who had turned a single shop into a chain that dotted the city with warm, welcoming lights. But he wasn't here today as a businessman. He was here as a man seeking something real. He'd grown tired of empty conversations at charity galas, of people who looked at him and saw only money. His friend had convinced him to try a blind date, assuring him that the woman he would meet was genuine, kind, someone worth knowing. He had smiled politely at the suggestion, but deep down, he longed for it to be true. As he scanned the cafe, his eyes landed on her. A young woman sitting alone at the window, hands cradling a cup as if it were the most precious thing in the world, her golden hair catching the light, her expression thoughtful yet shadowed by something he couldn't name. She was different. No flashy clothes, no rehearsed smile, just raw simplicity. And though Daniel had met countless people, something in his heart shifted when he saw her. He knew, somehow, that she was the one he was meant to find. Emily, unaware of his gaze, checked her phone nervously. No messages. No calls. A lump formed in her throat. Maybe he wasn't coming after all. Maybe this was just another cruel joke life was playing on her. She bit her lip, trying to stop the sting of tears. And then, a shadow fell across her table. She looked up, startled, into the eyes of a stranger who seemed too polished, too perfect to be standing there in front of her. "Emily," he asked, his voice deep, calm, carrying a warmth that melted the ice in her chest. For a moment, she could only stare, her heart thundering. "Yes," she whispered. Daniel smiled, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel. Your blind date." Emily hesitated, then placed her small hand in his. His grip was firm, steady, and in that simple touch, a spark passed between them, an unspoken promise that neither of them understood yet. She gestured awkwardly to the chair across from her. "Please, sit." He did, and for a long moment, they just looked at each other, silence stretching like a delicate thread. Then he asked gently, "How was your day?" It was such a simple question, one she heard a dozen times a shift at the hospital, but this time, it felt different. It felt like he actually cared about the answer. She laughed softly, a sound tinged with weariness. Long. But that's normal for me. He leaned forward slightly, intrigued. What do you do? I'm a nurse, she replied, her tone both proud and tired. Most days I barely stop moving. Some nights, I don't sleep at all. But I love it, even when it breaks me. Daniel studied her, admiration flickering in his eyes. Here was someone who gave everything and asked for nothing. Someone who didn't even realize how extraordinary she was. And as Emily looked at him, she saw not just a man in an expensive suit, but a pair of kind eyes focused solely on her, listening as though her words mattered. For the first time in years, she felt seen.